Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Roice-Gomes. I am the manager at University of Nevada Reno Extension's Living with Fire program, and welcome to Conversations with Living with Fire. May is Nevada Wildfire Awareness Month, and this is the time when we really educate Nevadans on how to prepare for wildfire. Typically, we do this around the state with in-person events. However, COVID-19 had a different idea for us, and we are now having these conversations on Facebook Live via Zoom. And today we are with Evan LaGuardia. He is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service from the Reno office. Welcome, Evan.
Hi, Jamie. How are you? Hi, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So having the title of meteorologist is incredibly impressive. Can you tell me what's involved in this role as a meteorologist?
Sure. So we are scientists who study the weather. Typically, we focus on the short-term forecast and long-term. So mainly forecast 7 to 10 days out. We focus, and then climatologist is the longer, like 30 years out. But we predict and forecast the future weather for our area here, and specifically as being a meteorologist in the federal government, the National Weather Service. We are at the Reno office, we are the official forecasters of not only the Reno area, but we actually forecast for an area the size of the state of Maine. So that includes the Sierra Crest, all the way up near the Oregon border, out east, Lovelock and Fallon, and all the way down south in southern Mineral County, and then as well as Mono County in California. So a very large area that we forecast for, and we're the ones that are responsible for putting out all the watches and the warnings and observations, things like that. So we are the official forecasters for the area, and no, we are not on TV or radio. No channels. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you only do that region, which would mean that there's an Elko National Weather Service and a Las Vegas National Weather Service that encompasses the whole state of Nevada, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So those are the three offices that take care of Nevada. Now, we also, like I said, so we take portions of California as well, mainly the Sierra. And then Las Vegas takes care of southern Nevada, as well as major parts, southern Sierra down in, as well as northern Arizona, some parts in the Mojave Desert around there. And so those are the three offices that take care of Nevada. But altogether, nationwide, we have 122 offices in the country that take care of the entire, a separate portion, a county warning area, we call it, that we forecast for. So, yeah, including, Guam, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and of course, Alaska.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, we are really lucky to have you guys as a partner. And I'm just going to get to it. What is in store for our fire weather outlook?
Yeah, so first I'd like to just wrap up what happened last year. And if we all remember, last year, in terms of fire weather season, was pretty non-active. For example, we had our office put out a total of 33 red flag warnings for 2019, and then compare it to relatively busier season in 2018, we put out 78 red flag warnings. So it wasn't that active, and one of the reasons could be there wasn't a lot of maybe some dry thunderstorms. That pattern that we would see thunderstorm activity in our area really didn't set up that monsoonal moisture from the south, as well as it wasn't really hot. It was dry, of course, look where we live, but as far as the temperature, we only had one day, and I believe it was either August 15th or the 18th, one of those days, it was in August, where the Reno airport hit 100 degrees for only 5 minutes, and that was the entire summer. So it really wasn't a very hot year, which will, if it's so hot, then that will be a big factor in fire weather season. So that is last year. So good news last year, The bad news, because there wasn't a lot of wildfires, at least small ones, there's a lot of fuel left over. So we call it carryover. So not a fuel expert, but I know that we do have a lot of that, a lot more cheatgrass and stuff that was left over from last year. So that was last year. This year, what happened in the winter? So what happens in our wet season, which is winter into early spring, really that's when we get our precipitation. And what happens during that season really determines what's going to happen in the summer when we have fire weather season into fall. So this year was actually one of the drier years we've had in the past 5 years, actually 4 years. So we haven't seen much snow. If you go look in the area, just at up in the Tahoe Basin, we're in the Truckee River Basin. We're very low on snow water equivalent. How much snowpack there is up there? We are way below average for this time of year. Even we are at the end of May here, we're still, we're below average. So not much snow. Yes, we did get a storm yesterday that put a couple inches up on the peaks, but that will only maybe delay fire season a couple weeks, but it will help. But overall, the snowpack and precipitation was just lacking this year, which will have a big impact on our fire weather season this year. So with that, I'd like to share a presentation. We'll go into more of the outlook now of more of the specifics. So give me a second here.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
This is incredibly important and interesting stuff. So again, we really appreciate that you are coming out to talk to us about this.
Of course, yeah. So you do see my screen?
Yes.
We're good to go. Okay. So right now we have I have on the screen here looking at core precipitation months. What happened this year in terms of temperature to the left. So on the left graphic, you can see that's the average temperature from January through March, and you can see we're above normal for those months. We were above normal, so it was a relatively warmer winter. In terms of precipitation, that's the graphic to the right, it was dry. You could see some of those oranges in there, which means much below average precipitation for January through March that we see. And then some in the Great Basin there are some spots that are, one of the record driest areas. So, and that was this year. So just recapping that it was a relatively warm winter and pretty dry winter as well. So not good signs for our fire weather season this year. As far as the drought monitor, taking a look just to the left of that graphic there, that was last year and beginning of May of last year. And you could see we're great, no drought problems, not even yellow or abnormally dry. This year, a little different because we had warmer winter, less snowpack, less precipitation overall this year. It actually has led to some areas in the Great Basin in Nevada, Western Nevada, to be abnormally to moderate drought already, as well as, no, not in our area, but just to highlight that extreme drought on the Oregon and Northern California border there. The good thing is, though, these haven't been updated to include the storm that just happened yesterday, but they did get a few inches of liquid precipitation in that area, as well as along the Sierra Crest in our region. So that would help, but like I said, it's just been so below average for most of the West Coast this year that yesterday's storm will help, but it would only kind of push back fire weather season maybe a few weeks. But yeah, so just showing that it is dry out there. So overall, looking at our outlook, these are graphics from the Climate Prediction Center, another portion of the Weather Service, another major office of the Weather Service. And they look at long-term, so like climate prediction, so long-term, months out. And this is their outlook for May, June, and July. You can see the temperature graphic to the left of there for the whole nation. You can see we're in the sweet spot for higher temperatures. So we are looking at above, normal temperatures this year. It's going to be hot, probably hotter than last year, maybe a few hundreds in there as well. So that is something not good, for in terms of fire weather in our region, because the hotter the temperatures are, the drier the air, it's going to dry out our fuels even faster and further. So higher temperature is not the best thing. Of course it's going to be hot, but we're going to maybe have more days in with in the 90s, and then maybe even some more triple digits in our region. So, and then the graphic to the right there, our precipitation graphic, looking dry, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Of course, in the Midwest and the East, they're going to see, it looks like, more precipitation, wetter conditions. But as far as the West Coast goes, looking pretty dry for our region. And we're more confident when we talk about forecaster confidence. We're more confident that we'll see those higher temperatures. There are just more signs that are showing warmer temperatures for this summer. But as far as precipitation goes, we have less confidence in that area. So we just don't see many signals showing, we're going to see that monsoonal moisture pattern set up over our region, which would, that would be a four corners high pressure system that kind of drags up moisture from the Gulf of California and the Pacific into our region, which will lead to thunderstorms. So we're just not seeing that pattern set up, no signals right now. So we're less confident, but that doesn't mean that it won't set up. So we just have to see what will happen in the coming months. But like I said, higher confidence in that we're going to see a warmer summer, and then as precipitation goes, less confident in that. So specifically talking about our fire weather season, this is graphics from the Predictive Services section of the National Fire Center in Boise, Idaho. And they do significant fire potential outlooks for our regions. I just want to zoom here. You can see this is Northern California, the Bay Area, down into the left-hand corner of the graphic there. And then we have the highlighted areas. So let's first talk about the graphic to the left. We're seeing above normal activity. We're going to see above normal activity for summer fires, and that for the Sacramento Valley and then all the way to the shore there in Northern California, they're looking at, their season maybe even starting as early as June. And then for our area, July into August is where we're going to see, that fire activity increase, at least for the Sierra Tahoe Basin into Northeast California, Plumas, and Lassen counties. So we're looking at, above normal activity starting July and August for those regions. And then zooming out, mainly focusing now on the Great Basin, looking, same idea, June, not so much activity, especially with this precipitation that just happened yesterday into the region. It'll delay fire season a couple weeks. So maybe June, if it starts to get warmer, which will most likely will, and drier, then we could see those a lot of those fuels dry up. Currently, a lot of, especially in the Great Basin and the Sierra, we're in green up mode. So a lot of the the vegetation is green and blooming, things like that. So not ready to burn, but some areas, especially down in Mono County or in lower elevations, are actually just about ready. So you could see that maybe June starting to get ready, but not that high fire activity just yet. It's really July, August, and then into the fall where we're going to see that above activity for the Great Basin, and then out maybe even to the southern, into the Mojave Desert area and into Utah and northern Arizona there. So July, August into the early fall, be ready. Then zooming out, just taking a national picture of what's going on in our fire potential outlook. You can see that, June, Northern California into southern Arizona and southern Nevada and Utah in June, starting to get above normal. And then really in July and August is when we start seeing our season start to increase. So that's the outlook for our region. So this is our famous freak out chart that we like to do at the office here. This is just looking at kind of a 30,000 foot view of the different regions in our area and what to expect, when it comes to our fire weather outlook. So you can see just by looking at the colors, you don't even have to read it. July, August for most of our areas, so Sierra Front, Great Basin, down in Mono County, Northern Sierra, Tahoe Basin, as well as Northeast California and Northwest Nevada, mainly July, August through September, really looking at above normal activity. So, heightened fire activity, because one, that's our time where we do see occasional, patterns set up where we could get some dry thunderstorms, but really, that's where we see maybe have our strong wind, possibly wind events, which is the main, driver for fire, as well as we're dry as a bone during those months in terms of relative humidity. So, July, August, September into the fall are the really, especially the September timeframe into October, where it could be some critical time, because that's when we start to see our transition into the into our more active weather season, but the precipitation is not there, but the winds are. So we really have to look out for the fall as well, and that's when all the fuels are pretty dried out by that point. So the fall is a specific time for our area as well. So yeah, just overall, our summary. Last year's fire weather, pretty quiet, especially on our side of the Sierra, compared to normal. We didn't have, like I said, not many windy days. It wasn't that hot, and we didn't have many thunderstorms. So yeah, it was great. Didn't have a lot of smoke in the area, not many wildfires on our side of the crest, but like I said before, we do have a lot of fuel that is carried over from that last year that could be a potential danger for this year. Winter, this past winter and spring, it started off pretty great around Thanksgiving. We had a nice storm system, and then into early December, but after that, it was pretty lame. We didn't really see that much precipitation. January and February were actually pretty warm. And then we made up some ground in March. There was no miracle like in 2018. We didn't see, a few inches of rain down in, Western Nevada like we did a couple years ago in March. So I wouldn't technically call it a miracle March, but, it was, okay. Like I said, a couple storms moved through, and it was just delaying fire season a couple of weeks, at a time. Not much snowpack overall. And then at least we don't have to worry about flooding. And then just taking a look at the overall outlook for this year, just summarizing, looking at, we're confident that we're going to see above normal temperatures this summer, but no clear sign for precipitation activity. You'll probably see some thunderstorms, but as far as a wetting pattern goes, we just don't see that setting up right now. With, not much precipitation, less confident in that region and more confident in the temperatures being warm, we are favoring a near to above normal fire activity this year. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of unburned carry fuels from last year and all the other wet winters we've had the past 3 years in the Great Basin. So that's something, and into the Sierra. And the one thing that we're really nervous about is the timber, because if you'll notice, if you go outside in the Great Basin, you'll notice, and just locally around Reno area, you'll notice the cheatgrass is quite small, and there wasn't much growth this year, and that really has to deal with, because we didn't get a lot of precipitation, so it didn't grow. So that might help us in our favor down here. But as far as in the the Sierra and the Tahoe Basin, especially, there's a lot of thick forests, a lot of the timber that we're really nervous about this year. That really hasn't seen a major wildfire in quite some time, in a few years now. So we're a little nervous about in that region. Yeah, so that pretty much wraps it up as in terms of our fire weather outlook for this year for the Great Basin into the Sierra.
Great. So this is all the reason to prepare now for wildfire. So I have actually heard of the term fire weather watch and red flag warning. Would you mind telling us the difference between these two?
Sure. Yep. So at the National Weather Service offices, we all do it. We put out a what's called a red flag warning. It's an official product. When we believe we see in forecasts, when we're forecasting above critical fire weather conditions, such as stronger winds, specifically around 15 to 20, I would say 15 to 30 miles per hour sustained, and then with gusts around 30 to 35 plus, because that would be the major factor, because that's the major element that drives the wildfires. And then relative humidity below 15%. If we're seeing one of those, we will, or mostly it's a combination of those two elements, then we will put out a red flag warning. If it's within the next 24 hours, we'll put out a warning. We'll also put out a warning if in the next 24 hours that we're going to see a dry thunderstorm scenario set up. Whereas maybe we're starting to see, we will use the terms monsoonal moisture from the south and being dragged up from the south, like I said before, the Gulf of California and the Pacific. The first couple of days are really important before the moisture comes up, because we'll start to see the pattern set up, but at first, maybe the first day or two, we'll get those dry thunderstorms. And what dry thunderstorms mean, they are thunderstorms that are there's not much moisture to it, so you won't get a wetting rain. And a wetting rain is more than a tenth of an inch of liquid that falls. So we'll just get the lightning and not much rain, maybe some hail, but the lightning is the problem. So if we see that setup start, possibly coming about, then we will issue a red flag warning if it's within 24 hours. A fire weather watch is a little different. Same idea as far as criteria goes. If we see, it's really the time frame that's different. So if we're going to see those critical fire weather conditions, such as the strong winds and the relative humidity or dry thunderstorm pattern set up within maybe, let's say 36, 48, even to 72 hours out, 3 days out, then we'll put out a fire weather watch saying, hey, listen, we're confident that, we're seeing a fire weather pattern set up in our region. We're just giving you the heads up that, we could see this happen in the next 3 days. But also, a fire weather watch is our lenient area where, hey, we're looking at a pattern setting up. We're going to issue a watch, just say that this could happen. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have a red flag warning. You could, something may happen 48 hours out and then we take the watch away. So just because we put out a watch doesn't mean, there's going to be bad fire weather conditions. No, it's just, hey, heads up that it could happen, but, we're confident that'll happen, but, we're not putting out the warning just yet. If we put out a warning, then it's going to happen. Be prepared. And that normally we do within 24 hours.
And so how can folks find out about this information?
Sure. Yep. So if you go on our webpage, it's www.weather.gov/REV or /Reno, RENO. You could go, everything will be on there, as well as we do what's called weather stories and social media graphics. We're on Twitter and Facebook, just it's National Weather Service, Reno, just type that in on Twitter or Facebook. And we put out messages pretty much every day. And then we put out what's called weather stories on our front page of our website that will detail any hazards that are going to take place in the forecast in the future. So those are great ways to get us. We're also on, not many people have them, but at least in this area, but we also broadcast our forecasts on NOAA Weather Radio. It's a Pacific radio that it's used a lot out in the Midwest with thunderstorms, things like that. But if you don't have access to the internet or things like that, you can tune into, through our NOAA Weather Radio. We do broadcast all our warnings and the forecast on that as well. But the best way, social media, our accounts, as well as our web page has everything that you need. So everything that you need to keep up to date.
Fascinating. I really enjoyed all of those graphics and your presentation. What if folks would like to learn more from that? Where did you get those graphics from? At least for like the predictive services?
So they are actually, if you type in for the fire weather outlooks, the National Fire Center in Boise, Idaho puts all those graphics on their website, as well as if you go on our website, so www.weather.gov/REV, we actually, in our headlines on top of our webpage, it will show actually one of our headlines. You can click on it. It's called 2020 Wildland Fire Outlook. And that will, if you click on that link, you will actually, it'll bring up the national fire outlook from the National Fire Center in Idaho. Everything, all those graphics, they're all taken, it's all pretty much in there. It's long because it's for the whole nation. But you can find our stuff right on there as far as the outlook goes, fire weather outlooks. Yep.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Great information.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else to add, Evan?
No, that's it. Enjoy the summer as much as you can. It is difficult times, but enjoy it as much as you can, and be aware. Just watch out, and follow your local authorities when it comes to our fire weather. And follow us on Twitter and Facebook to get the most updates, and as well as Living with Fire. Follow you guys because you give wonderful updates as well. So,
thanks, Evan. Well, we actually didn't plan it this way, but it happened. On Friday, we're going to have a specialist from Cooperative Extension talk about how to remove weeds like cheatgrass and such. So it really follows greatly with our talk. So we could
for sure
for that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
Thanks again, Evan. We really appreciate it.
Of course, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.